Lockerbie, December 21st, 1988. High up in the skies, Pan Am Flight 103 has just left London's Heathrow Airport. It's approaching the small Scottish town of Lockerbie, heading to its stop at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York, before arriving at its final destination in Detroit. At 18:58, Pan Am 103 makes contact with Shanwick Oceanic Area Control and approaches the corner of the Solway Firth at 1901, crossing it in 1902. Unknown to flight crew members and passengers, there's a suitcase bomb on the plane. In a few minutes, one of the world's worst-case airplane tragedies is about to happen. The lives of all 243 passengers and 16 crew members are at stake. Will the crew members discover the bomb on time and avoid this horrific tragedy? Let's find out. This is a story of Pan Am Flight 103. It's a beautiful day in Frankfurt, Germany, at the Frankfurt International Airport. 243 passengers and 16 flight crew members are preparing for their 12-hour trip to Detroit, Michigan in the United States. The Pan Am transatlantic flight from Frankfurt to Detroit is said to have a stopover in London and another in New York City. For those going to London, it's a much shorter flight, totaling 1 hour and 35 minutes. Frankfurt is a popular destination for tourists and educational visits, as 35 of the passengers are students from Syracuse University who participated in the university's Division of International Programs Abroad and are returning home for the holidays. The plane for today's flight is a Boeing 727, an American narrow-body airliner produced by Boeing for commercial use. Many airlines at the time used the Boeing 727 because of its peculiarity in using smaller runways while flying medium-range routes. Pay attention to this detail, because it'll be important to understand this story. Pan Am had a rule of routinely changing the aircraft while flying different legs of a flight. Passengers could book the Pan Am Flight 103 as a single Frankfurt to New York trip or a Frankfurt to Detroit trip with a scheduled change of aircraft at London's Heathrow Airport. For today's flight, the latter is the case. The flight originates from Frankfurt with a Boeing 727. All members of the plane have completed their boarding process and are now ready to begin their journey. The captain is cleared for takeoff, and the Pan Am 103 flight to Detroit begins, with its first stopover at Heathrow Airport in the United Kingdom. After about 1 hour and 35 minutes of air travel, Pan Am Flight 103 arrived at Heathrow Airport, where it's to undergo a plane change as was customary for planes arriving under the feeder flight category. Upon arrival at Heathrow Terminal 3, the passengers and their luggage, as well as an unaccompanied suitcase, which is part of the interline luggage, were prepared for transfer to the Clipper Mate of the Seas, a Boeing 747-100 with a registration N739PA. The Boeing 747 plane had just arrived at Heathrow Airport from a flight originating from Los Angeles with a stop at San Francisco. It was parked at gate K14 and being prepped for its next journey, Flight 103. The Boeing 747 is a much bigger plane than the 727. Unlike the 727, the Boeing 747 is a long-range, wide-body airliner with 4 engines. With a seating capacity of over 366, the 747 possesses a unique 343 seating arrangement in economy class and a 232 layout in the first-class area of the main deck. The upper deck has a 3-3 seating arrangement in economy class and a 2-2 layout in first class. Only 1,574 of these planes were ever made. The Boeing 747, operating Pan Am Flight 103, was named Clipper Mate of the Seas. The flight commander for the Pan Am 103 flight with a Boeing 747 is 55-year-old Captain James B. McQuarrie. He's been a pilot with Pan Am since 1964 and has almost 11,000 flight hours under his belt during that time. Of those hours, 4,000 have come co-piloting a 747 aircraft. Before joining Pan Am, Captain James B. McQuarrie served in the U.S. Navy for 3 years and 5 years in the Massachusetts Air National Guard, where he achieved the rank of Major. Accompanying for this flight were First Officer Raymond R. Wagner and Flight Engineer Jerry D. Averitt, who both had 5,500 and 8,000 hours of flying time, respectively. Raymond Wagner had previously served in the New Jersey National Guard for 8 years before joining Pan Am, and engineer Jerry D. Everett had only flown 500 hours with the 747. By 1820, all passengers had successfully boarded the Boeing 747-100, and at exactly 1825, the plane took off from runway 27R, bound for New York JFK Airport, and then Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County Airport. The flight is now in the air, and everything is going smoothly. Fast forward to 1858. The aircraft makes a two-way radio contact with Shanwick Oceanic Area Control in Prestwick. 3 minutes later, at precisely 1901, the aircraft approached the corner of Solway Firth, and by 1902, it crossed the coast. On scope, the aircraft is currently showing transponder code 0357 and flight level 310. Think of a transponder code as a number assigned to an aircraft by air traffic controllers to uniquely identify a flight information region. It allows for easy identification of aircraft on radar. At this point, the aircraft, Clipper made of the seas, is flying at 31,000 feet on a 316-degree magnetic heading and at a speed of 580 kilometers per hour. Exactly 44 seconds after crossing the coast, the airway controller at the Scottish Air Traffic Control Centre, Alan Top, transmitted its oceanic route clearance on behalf of Shanwick. However, the aircraft didn't acknowledge the message, and the Clipper made of the seas flicked off. At this point, concern and worry set in as traffic control attempted to make contact with the flight, but received no response. Unknown to the air controllers, the worst scenario was happening. An initially unidentifiable explosion occurred from within the plane almost directly under the side of the fuselage, in the forward cargo hold, punching a 50-centimeter hole on the fuselage's left side. Boom! At 19:02 and 50 seconds, a loud noise was recorded on the cockpit voice recorder, and rather than one, 5 radar echoes fanning out appeared. Within minutes, a British Airways pilot flying the London-Glasgow shuttle near Carlisle contacted Scottish authorities to report that he could see a huge fire on the ground. It was at this moment that it became clear to the air controllers that a tragic crash had occurred with the Boeing 747 on the Pan Am 103 flight. A comparison of the CVR to the radar returns showed that about 8 seconds after the explosion, the wreckage had a 1 nautical mile spread. As the explosion occurred mid-air, it was magnified by the uncontrollable fuselage decompression, a large difference in pressure between the aircraft's interior and exterior. The rudder control cables and elevator of the aircraft became disrupted, and the fuselage continued to pitch downward to the left. It continued until reaching 9,000 feet, when the dive became almost vertical. Due to the extreme flutter from the plane's wings, the vertical stabilizer started disintegrating, causing yawing movements. A yaw motion is a side-to-side movement of the nose of the aircraft. As the fuselage continued to disintegrate, flying debris tore off the 2 horizontal stabilizers, causing the rear fuselage, 3 engines, and fin torque box to separate. Parts of the baggage hold, the rear fuselage, and 3 landing gear units landed at Rosebank Crescent. The fuselage consisting of the main wing box structure landed in Sherwood Crescent, destroying 3 homes and creating a more severe impact. The 91,000 kilograms of jet fuel ignited fires, which destroyed several additional houses. Sadly, all 243 passengers and 16 crew members were killed and died from the crash. The impact also resulted in the death of 11 residents of Lockerbie on the ground. Of the 270 total fatalities, 190 were American citizens and 43 were British citizens, including 35 students from Syracuse University. The flight manifest included 19 other nationalities, with 4 or fewer passengers per country. In the aftermath of the crash, investigators ascertained that both wings of the aircraft landed in the Sherwood Crescent crater, saying, "The total absence of debris from the wing primary structure found remote from the crater confirmed the initial impression that the complete wing box structure had been present at the main impact." The United States Federal Aviation Administration later concluded that no emergency procedures were initiated in the cockpit. Police searchers found the CVR, located in the tail section of the aircraft, in a field within 24 hours. It contained no recorded distress call. although a 180 millisecond hissing noise could be heard as the explosion destroyed the aircraft's communications center. Investigations eventually revealed the cause of the crash to be a suitcase bomb explosion from a coordinated terrorist attack. In 2003, the then president of Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, accepted his country's responsibility for the tragic Pan Am flight bombing, paying heavy compensation to the families of all victims involved in the crash. However, Gaddafi maintained that he never gave any orders to initiate the attack. Several relatives of the victims of the crash, including Lockerbie campaigner Jim Swire, believed that the bomb was planted at Heathrow Airport and not by a feeder flight from Malta, as the US and UK governments claimed. While a sleeper cell belonging to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, General Command had been operating in West Germany in the months before the Pan Am bombing. They weren't tied to the bombing. Eventually, in 2020, United States authorities indicted Libyan national and Tunisia resident Abu Masoud for his participation in the bombing. In December 2022, he was taken into custody but pleaded not guilty in February 2023, with a further trial set for May 2025. If you enjoyed watching this dramatic yet unfortunate air crash story, you won't want to miss our next one.